Wow, that's some group of people. So we're going to be discussing something so important for our country, for our economy, and for getting us all working again and working well again. It's a tax reform that I think will make America strong and great again. Too few Americans are working, too many jobs are being shipped overseas, and too many middle-income families cannot make ends meet. This plan directly meets these challenges and the challenges also of business. It will provide major tax relief for middle-income and for most other Americans. There will be a major tax reduction. It'll simplify the tax code. It'll grow the American economy at a level that it hasn't seen for decades. And all of this does not add to our debt or our deficit, but I'll also be discussing some of that at the end, because we have to make much better deals, we have to negotiate much harder, and we've got to make our economy strong. Changes for individuals will be at levels that you haven't seen in a long time. We're going to cut the individual rates from 7 brackets to 4. Simplification. 25%, 20%, 10%, and 0. If you're single and earn less than $25,000 per year, or married and jointly earn less than $50,000. So, very important. If you're single and earn less than $25,000, or married and jointly earn less than $50,000, you'll not pay any income tax, nothing. This eliminates very strongly and quickly the marriage penalty, very unfair penalty. It eliminates the AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax. It ends the death tax. It's a double taxation. A lot of families go through hell over the death tax. It reduces or eliminates most of the deductions and loopholes available to special interests and to the very rich. In other words, it's going to cost me a fortune, which is actually true, while preserving charitable giving and mortgage interest deductions, very importantly. It ends the current tax treatment of carried interest. Those are the hedge fund folks that I've been talking about for quite a while. They make a lot of money, carried interest. So it ends the current tax treatment of carried interest for speculative partnerships that do not grow businesses or create jobs and are not risking their own capital. Changes for business. Now, so important, because it's all about business. It's all about jobs. We have 93 million people in this country that are in serious trouble, that want to work, they can't work. So for business, no business of any size, from a Fortune 500 company to a mom-and-pop shop, to a freelancer living from gig to gig, will pay more than 15% of their business income in taxes. Big reduction. A one-time deemed repatriation of corporate cash held overseas at significantly discount, which coming back at a significantly discount, 10%. So it comes back discounted at a 10% tax rate and ends the deferral of taxes on corporate income earned abroad. Now, it's called corporate inversion. It's a huge subject. I've been watching politicians now for years. All talk, no action politicians. I've been watching them for years talking about bringing this money back. The number is probably $2.5 trillion. Everybody agrees it should come back. Republicans, Democrats, everybody. They can't make a deal. They don't know how to go about making a deal. The reason companies aren't bringing it back is the tax is onerous. It doesn't make sense to bring it back. And in fact, many companies are leaving the United States. They're leaving our shores to go and collect their money. They're actually moving out of the United States for two reasons. The taxes are too high, and because they have tremendous amounts of money that they can't bring back into this country when everybody wants them to bring it back in. It's called leadership. We will have that money brought back in. As an example, I have millions of dollars overseas. I can't bring it back into this country. We file papers. We've been doing this for a year and a half. You can't get it back in. So the money stays in other countries, and that's what happens. Not good for us. The level of leadership that we need to get things like this done is so important. But this is something, and I've been watching it for a long time, everybody agrees to. We also reduce or eliminate some business loopholes, many of them actually, and deductions made unnecessary or redundant by the new lower tax rate on business income. The tax rate now is so low that a lot of these deductions, which are complicated, which don't make sense, and which are unfair, are gone. And we phase in a reasonable cap on the deductibility of the business interest expense. So we are going to give you, we have a very complex set of papers that actually, if you know business, is not so complex. And we're going to hand them out right now to the press. And I think you'll see we have an amazing code. It will be simple. It will be easy. It will be fair. It's graduated. As you get up in income, you pay a little more. Some of the very unfair deductions that certain people have been given who make a lot of money will not be available any longer. But I actually believe they'll do better because I think the economy will grow. It'll grow rapidly, and we'll have something very special. Now, with all of that being said, and before we take some questions, we have to cut the costs of what's going on in this country. If you look at what we're doing and the money we're spending, I read where a washer, you know what a washer is? Nuts, bolts, and washer. To send from one state to another, it was a 19-cent washer, and it cost $900 and some odd thousand to send it from here to there. And there are many examples. Hammers that cost $800 that you can buy in a store for a tiny amount of money. We will run this country properly. There is so much money to be saved. We're reducing taxes, but at the same time, if I win, if I become president, we will be able to cut so much money and have a better country. We won't be losing anything other than we'll be balancing budgets and getting them where they should be. So this is a plan that's simple, that's a major reduction. I think people are going to be very happy. We've already had some very good reviews. I did the plan with some of the leading scholars and economists and tax experts that there are in this country. They love it. They say, why hasn't this been done before? And this is my wheelhouse. That's what I do well. The economy is what I do well. Whenever they do polls, I always come out way above everybody else on the economy. And on leadership, by the way, but I won't say that. So if anybody has, wow. Thank you. That's amazing. That's some of the press was actually clapping. I never saw that. I don't think I've ever seen that before. All right, why don't we take some questions from the press? Yes, go ahead. No, I'm not going to do that yet. I have to get their approval. But we have some of the top people in the country worked on this. Well, we're looking at a 3%, but we think it can be 5. It could even be 6. We're going to have growth that will be tremendous. And by the way, if we have more than 3, these numbers are really spectacular. And one of the things that they don't take into account in any big league fashion is the cutting. There is so much waste in government that I believe when I get in there, I'll be able to cut, without losing anything, to cut tremendous amounts off of the, and we're not even showing anything for that. So they're very conservative numbers. Yes, Sarah. Yeah. My taxes will, first of all, I'll have a much simpler tax statement. It'll be much simpler. When I do my return, it'll be my returns go up to the ceiling and beyond, which is ridiculous. And you spend millions of dollars at a high level on lawyers, accountants, and everything else. We want to simplify them to a tremendous level. The bracket of 25, the big difference is many of the loopholes and many of the deductions, which are old, have been there for years, are antiquated in many cases, or are put there because a lot of the people that get these deductions are contributed to Hillary, they're contributing to Bush, they're contributing to every candidate but Trump, because I'm not taking any money, I'm self-funding. And these people want these deductions. There will be people, we're reducing taxes, but believe me, there will be people in the very upper echelons that won't be thrilled with this. We're taking away deductions, and that's one of the reasons we're able to lower it. So yeah, this is actually a tax reduction. A big tax reduction, including for the upper income. I believe that the economy will do so well that even though they won't be getting certain deductions, which aren't fair for them to be getting, that they'll end up doing better. Okay, yes, go ahead. I just think this is a common sense approach. You know, we could say supply side. You could say there's 15 different names given out for different kinds of reductions or increases. I don't think it's supply side or anything else. I think this is a common sense, well thought out tax proposal that's going to trigger the economy, going to make everybody go back and really want to work. It's going to create tremendous numbers of jobs. One of the other things that I'm coupling this with is if I become president, I'm going to renegotiate our trade deals, because our trade deals are not sustainable by this country, not sustainable. We cannot continue to let our jobs go to all of the different countries. There's not a country that we negotiate with that doesn't make a better deal. Everybody, we lose money with everything. I'm also going to renegotiate some of our military costs because we protect South Korea. We protect Germany. We protect some of the wealthiest countries in the world, Saudi Arabia. We protect everybody. We protect everybody. And we don't get reimbursement. We lose on everything. We lose on everything. So we're going to negotiate and renegotiate trade deals, military deals, many other deals that's going to get the cost down for running our country very significantly. I'm not showing a big number in that, but I believe that if I become president, those numbers are going to be massive. As an example, Saudi Arabia, they make $1 billion a day. We protect them. So we need help. We're losing a tremendous amount of money on a yearly basis, and we owe $19 trillion. I used to say 18 for the last 6-7 months. Now it's 19, and it's only going up. Yes, Tom? Well, now, Senator, look, Senator Rubio is a lightweight. We understand that. He wouldn't be able to do this. He wouldn't know a trade deal from any other deal. And what
Got a home office? You might be able to save on your taxes, but the IRS has several rules you need to follow. Do you work from home as an employee? If so, it must be for the convenience of your employer, and your employer must document this in writing. Are you self-employed? Then you must operate a trade or business to qualify. And a trade or business is specifically defined, so don't try to deduct the costs of part-time sales or anything else the IRS can call a hobby. When you do qualify, you may be able to deduct a portion of real estate taxes, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, insurance, depreciation, and other expenses. But don't get carried away. you must meet additional regulations and restrictions, so pay attention. To claim a business deduction, you must use part of your home exclusively and regularly as your principal place of business, unless it is used for storage of inventory or product samples, or as a daycare facility. Then it has to be used in a trade or business. You can also claim a deduction if you use the space in your home to meet or deal with customers, or if your business structure is not attached to your home. Tasks such as answering email from your smartphone or looking over the stock pages in the Wall Street Journal or on your tablet aren't enough for a deduction. Any deduction for a home office is based on the percentage of your home that is used for business. So whatever space is used exclusively and regularly for a trade or business, divided by the total square footage of the residence, is what you get to apply to your expenses. If you are self-employed, you should use Form 8829 to figure your home office deduction and report those deductions on line 30 of Form 1040 Schedule C. Your deduction may be limited if the gross income from your business is less than your total business expenses. However, you can deduct the remaining amount of mortgage interest and real estate taxes, as you always do, as an itemized deduction. And remember, if you are an employee, the regular and exclusive use rule must be for the convenience of your employer and in writing. Developing a tax plan for your home office can make your head spin. If you need expert help getting your business off on the right foot, ask your local CPA. No one knows the ins and outs of finances and tax planning like they do.
Certain people are trying to do is they're trying to take, we just went up in the last poll, we went up 2 points in the last poll, and we continue to go up. In the NBC poll, I think we went from 26 to 29. We're going up very strongly in the polls. They don't know what to do about it. I built a great company. You'll see that in 60 Minutes last night. I built a great company. It's a phenomenal company with very little debt, tremendous cash flow. I'm funding my own campaign. Guys like Rubio, I mean, he desperately needs money. Ask the car dealer in Florida. Ask the people that support him. And a guy like Rubio and others, I don't want to single him out. You're singling him out. But they're largely controlled by their donors, the special interests, and frankly, more than anybody else, the lobbyists. I've turned down millions and millions of dollars from lobbyists and special interests because it's not the right thing. It's just not right. And that seems to be resonating very strongly. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I negotiate. It's true, I do. I get bills from people and I negotiate. Or is that a bad thing? The country should do that. Yeah, I would. I'd bring that same attitude to the White House. It's true. She said, I have a habit. When you get a bill, you call up and you negotiate. To me, that's a compliment. No, I want to take that thinking to the White House. I would bet you we could save 20% of our budget. I could even say more, but we could save a tremendous amount. That has to be the attitude our country has. You can't spend millions and millions of dollars on doing something that you can do for $2,000. You know, when you look at costs, we just spent $1 million building a soccer field, okay? A soccer field for our prisoners that happen to be in Guantanamo, okay? I don't like that. What do you need $1 million for? Level out the surface, let them play, if they have to play at all, okay? What do you need to spend $1 million? We just spent, it's a story today, $1 million on a soccer field. How do you spend $1 million doing the soccer field? You have a level piece of land. Throw them a ball, let them play soccer, if they have to play at all. Why are they playing soccer is my question. Okay. Yes, sir, go ahead. No, it's too long. You don't have time. You're not time. All right, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead? Right. No, not at all. We're lowering taxes, which the Republicans love. And I think one of the reasons I am doing so well in the polls, and one of the reasons I'm doing so well when it comes to the economy in all polls, is that this is the thinking. No, we're lowering taxes very substantially, we're simplifying, and we're getting rid of deductions that are actually obsolete that certain people want to keep for. Yeah, go ahead. Why is he harder on me than Putin? I would say because Putin is a nicer person than I am. Okay, go ahead. Right, right. It's the worst in 36 years. Okay. Well, it's a good question, and you can connect the dots. But I guess it has been probably since '04, you know, you're talking about 10, 11, 12 years, that people have wanted to bring the money back into the country. And again, it's called corporate inversion. And a lot of times the corporations are moving out and they're going to other countries, taking jobs. And now we have a really big problem because we have serious companies, very large, very prestigious companies, as you know. Obviously, you know something about business. But we have major companies looking to move out of the United States. You know, it used to be they'd move from New York to Florida, they'd move from New Jersey to Texas or whatever. Now they're talking about moving from the United States to Ireland and to England and to other places, to Spain, where they get treated differently and, frankly, better. And they're doing that for a number of the reasons, but one of the big reasons, as you know, is taxes. One of the other reasons is to get all of this cash that they've built up and they can't get back into our country. And when this money comes back into our country that everybody wants, it's going to be put to work in our country largely. It can go other places, but largely. And I think it'll be an amazing boon. Now, here's the other thing. They think it's $2.5 trillion. I think it's much more than that. I actually think it's going to be more money than that. And boy, if it is, we have hit pay dirt. Yeah, go ahead, real fast. Well, you know, when you end the repatriation, when you get the money coming back in, beyond, tremendous things happen. Sarah, go ahead. Well, I'll be announcing that in the not-too-distant future. But I will tell you, I've been honest. I'm the only one that's honest about this thing. I watched Romney, and I watched, I pay so much tax, I pay so much tax. I watch all politicians, and they say, I fight like hell to pay as little as possible. Can I say that? I'm not a politician. I fight like hell, always, because it's an expense. And, you know, I fight. I have the best lawyers and the best accountants, and I fight, and I pay. But it's an expense. And, frankly, I would feel differently if this country were spending the money wisely instead of throwing it out the drain. Our country spends our money so stupidly. And I will tell you that I can speak for myself. I pay a lot of tax, but I fight like hell to make it as low as possible. But I would feel a lot differently if our leadership was such that I respected the decisions. All you have to do is look at a list of the things that our government is spending money on right now, and you don't feel so good about our country. Yes? Well, I'll tell you what, in terms of income inequality, we're going to create a lot of jobs. You know, right now, we have a false 5.4, 5.3, 5.6. Every month is different. It is such a phony number because when people look and look and look, and then they give up looking for a job, they're taken off the roll. So the number isn't reflective. I've seen numbers of 24%. I actually saw a number of 42% unemployment. 42%. And it could be because when you're looking for a job and you go around and you look and you look and you fight and you want to work and you want to take care of your family, and then you can't get the job, and you know what I'm talking about because you're shaking your head, and you can't get the job, essentially, for statistical purposes, you are considered employed. So then I read, every time it comes out, I hear 5.3% unemployment. That is the biggest joke there is in this country. That number is so false. And, you know, people ask, how come Trump is doing so well and Carson and others? How come they're doing? You know why they're doing well? Because people are tired of political speak. They're tired of that. And the worst example of it, one of the worst examples of it, is the phony unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is probably 20%. But I will tell you, you have some great economists that will tell you it's 30, 32, and the highest I've heard so far is 42%. There's anger out there at the job picture. Now, one other thing. With that being said, China, Japan, Mexico, Brazil, these countries are all taking our jobs like we're a bunch of babies. That will stop. People will treat us fairly if I become president. We are losing our jobs. We're losing our base. We're losing our manufacturing. All of that will stop. Yeah, go ahead. Well, this is number one, it's simplification. Number two, what I'm really doing is the big picture, because corporations now are going to start having an incentive to create jobs. They're going to have an incentive also to stay in this country. I know nothing about that. Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm not a populist. No, I'm not. I'm a man of great common sense. I'm a man that's built a tremendous company with the best locations in real estate, the best everything. You're here at one of them. I have many of these. I've done a great job. I've employed tens of thousands of people. I employ now thousands and thousands of people. I've done a good job, but I wouldn't say populist at all. I would say I'm a man of common sense. I'm cutting taxes. I'm going to create a lot of jobs. I'm going to get rid of a tremendous amount of waste. And I'll tell you what, the waste that I get rid of, is going to have a huge impact. And I'm not even putting that in my numbers. So I think it's going to be terrific. All right, how about one more question? Go ahead. Yes, the motor industry. That's a beautiful way of describing it, the motor industry. Where are you from? England. I love oh, what a beautiful accent. No, I want to get the industry, we call it the automobile industry, but I want to get the automobile industry to...
You know, markets are always portrayed as cold, profits before people, whereas, you know, free markets are quite the opposite. They bring about cooperation. They break down barriers, succeed by meeting the needs and wants of others. You may not love your neighbor, but you want to sell to your neighbor.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and today we're sitting down with Steve Forbes. He's the journalist, writer, analyst, and recidivist presidential candidate. Steve Forbes, thanks for talking with Reason TV.
Good to be with you, Nick.
Just to get it out of the way, are you going to run for 2016 for president?
No, I'm an agitator. I'm the only one not running.
Okay.
And let others do the exercise this time.
Now, one of the things that you really mainstreamed in American political discourse, particularly in presidential races, was the idea of the flat tax going back, you know, almost 20 years. We have at least two versions of a flat tax that have been put into play by by candidates Rand Paul and Marco Rubio. What do you think of their flat tax plans, and where do they depart from where they should be going?
Well, take Rubio. He's put a plan out there, but it has two rates instead of one. And when you put two tax rates together, it's like putting two rabbits together. They will multiply. We should have learned that from 1986 when we got it down to two rates. Within a few years, it was the weeds were growing again. So you got to do one, because if you have one and you want to make a change, you can't say, oh, that guy will pay, you won't.
Right.
And if you're going to make a change, the simplicity is its best defense. If you're going to make a change, everyone sees what you're doing, whereas with the current code today, you can put something in, it'll be 2 years before somebody discovers it.
Staying on the Rubio plan, which was also co-sponsored by Mike Lee, the Utah senator, there's also a child tax credit in that. That's vastly expanded from $1,000 to $2,500, and that there's no income cap on that. That blows something like, according to various scores, $2 trillion in revenue problems. Does that muddy the problem too?
Yes, it's a form of social engineering. It's one thing to have basic exemptions. You should be allowed to keep a certain amount of income to meet the necessities of life. That goes back to the code in 1913. But the idea that you can try to get people to have more kids by having a generous credit, or this will appeal to the middle class, or some such thing, is wrong. It does not help the economy, and experiences of other countries show if you're pro-population, it's not going to do much there.
And I guess you were also pointing, I mean, there's a moral dimension to this, too. It's social engineering. That shouldn't be done by the tax code. It shouldn't be done by the government at all.
It's usually a bad idea. One, it creates political special interests. Who's against housing? Well, now you've got one of the most powerful lobbies in the country. So in terms of, and plus the Rubio plan, the 35% rate under the current code, you reach, as an individual or a couple, reach the 35% rate around $400,000 a year. Under his plan, if you're a single, it's $75,000. If you're a couple filing, it's $150,000. So for a lot of taxpayers, this is going to be a tax increase.
So talk about the Rand Paul plan. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a good step in the right direction, and to be applauded, putting a serious plan out there with a single rate. And there, I think...
and what is his rate? It's
14.5%. Right. He has a 14.5% rate, but he keeps in charity and mortgages. And because the lobbies are so strong, why pick a fight with them? I think the way you get around that, but nobody seems to have picked up on it, is you give people a choice. You can have a pure flat tax and say you want that, or if you want to put yourself through the tortures of the old code, you can keep the old code. Hong Kong has a variation of that. They have a progressive system. I love this progression, 2 to 20%, or a flat 16%, but you make the choice. So if you're hung up on deductions, you can do it. It also takes a huge political argument away. They can't frighten you. Oh, we're going to destroy housing, destroy charities and everything else. What it does do is say, don't trust us. See for yourself which one is better.
Clearly everybody, I mean, and this is from Barack Obama to Mitch McConnell, and everybody in between is saying, I mean, it's clear that we need to redo the tax code. 1986 was the last comprehensive overhaul. Whether they get to a flat tax or not, what has to happen for that kind of political consensus? I mean, we have a consensus that it needs to change, but what has to happen for things to actually start moving?
The way you get something moving on something as fundamental as taxes is to get it in the public arena for debate. That's why I'm delighted that Senator Rand Paul has put a proposal out. Delighted that Senator Cruz is in favor of the flat tax. Apparently Governor Walker is, Governor Kasich is. Because if you have it out there and then you can have a debate, then you can refine it. Most importantly, you get the mandate. When Ronald Reagan ran in 1980, he vigorously campaigned on a 30% across-the-board tax cut. Ended up getting 25% from Congress. The reason he got 25 is he had the mandate. So if he'd gone out with a mild milquetoast proposal, he'd have ended up with virtually nothing.
What is the function of the tax code in America? I mean, in a sense, we never seem to talk about the idea that, well, taxes are the price we pay for government. Nobody is even pretending that they would be able to raise the revenue for the amount of outlays that government is making. How do we bring that into this conversation?
Well, the way you discuss something like a flat tax is, it will raise revenue. And then the debate should be what you do with the revenue. But with a vibrant economy, Hong Kong, with their very low rates, as look over time, their growth of government revenue has been phenomenal. Not from crushing people, but from allowing people to flourish. The key thing on that is revenue you can get. The question is, what should be the spending? Where should the resources go? What should the resources be applied to? And then those are two separate debates, and that's the key thing to keep in mind, because they'll throw, oh, it might increase the deficit. Well, if you spend enough, yes, it will. I mean,
well, speaking of deficits, John Kasich, governor of Ohio, who is also obviously running for president, he's going around talking a lot about a balanced budget amendment. He's got pretty good credentials on this. When he was in the House in the late 90s, he helped broker a bunch of balanced budget deals that came out of Washington. What do you think of the balanced budget amendment as a concept, or is the devil always in the details?
Well, a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution, I mean, is a capital expenditure to be confused with a regular everyday expenditure, building a battleship versus buying a pencil. And then in terms of balance, the danger there is it can become a tax increase vehicle. We must balance it. Well, I'm not going to touch this program or that program, and suddenly you find that.
But do we have to? I mean, is that the worry, given the fact that
no, you don't need a balanced budget amendment to put Washington's finances in order. And the way you put Washington's finances in order is not what the Republicans did 20 years ago when they got control of Congress. They started to chip away at this program and that program. It's like World War I trench warfare. You take the redoubt, and then you get the counteroffensive, which happened in 1996 in Kablooey. The way you do it is go first after the big things. That's where having personal accounts and Social Security, you're turning a liability into an asset, and it's popular among young people.
So what about Medicare? Because
we're beginning to lurch into it in a very messy way, but we don't have real free markets in health care. We have pieces of it, but not real free markets. Proof of it is if you go to a clinic or hospital and you ask in advance what it costs, get a strange look. It means either you're uninsured or you're a lunatic. Why would you want to know the price? Now, can you imagine coming to a hotel or a restaurant and not caring about the price and let Medicare worry about it?
Do we need to get rid of Medicare?
No. What you need to do is get the patient in charge of Medicare. Then the thing starts to take care of itself. Right now, in terms of health care in America, you, the patient, are not the customer. It's the third party, whether it's private or government. And when you have a third party, which is why when you go to the hospital, you have those crazy gowns that are always look 80 years old. You can't tie them in the back. No hotel would give you a robe like that. And if they had to compete with you as a patient customer, they wouldn't. It would be an entirely different experience.
What needs to happen? I mean, I think a lot of people are totally on board with the idea of bringing markets to healthcare. It creates competition. It will innovate choice.
And it creates more healthcare.
Right. Yep.
Markets allowed to work, free markets always turn scarcity into abundance.
So what has to happen for that to happen? Or, what has to change? Because both with Obamacare, where you have now people who are not even paying their own insurance premium, so it's kind of like a fourth payer is added, the taxpayer, in the subsidy system. But then beyond that, it's, how do we get to a place where you're actually shelling out your own money except for big ticket items?
There are various ways you go about it. One is having nationwide competition for insurance policy. I live in New Jersey. I can get a perfectly good one at half the price in Pennsylvania because they don't have as many idiot regulations as New Jersey does. So you have that kind of competition. Clear out mandates. You should be able to choose what you want. And one of the things that Obama's doing is by helping destroy employer-provided health care, putting more and more, as employers are doing anyway, on the consumer, giving consumers by de facto is going to be getting more and more power. And one of the things that markets will respond to is you don't have to pay $25,000 a year for a family policy. We can give you one that covers accidents, the diseases and the like for a third of that. And you may have to pay for the filling in your tooth, but you're covered. Right now, even if you have a catastrophe, your insurance won't cover all of it.
So
Medicare
you're in favor. You're saying Obamacare is having a good effect then, right?
Unintended.
Yeah.
So we're not going back to what we had before. We're not going to have Obamacare, which is imploding in and of itself. Adverse selection is beginning to kill the thing. So just don't get sick for 3 or 4 years while we sort this thing out.
Well, the other big annual item in the budget is the defense budget, which is coming in at, $600 billion this year or thereabouts, give or take a bit. How much should that be cut?
Those who advocate a single-payer system, the response should be, we have a single-payer system. It's called the Pentagon. You like their procurement system, then we can have that in health care. But in terms of terms of defense, I believe that's the first function of government, is to defend the realm.
But you're not saying that every dollar that the Pentagon gets, it spends wisely.
Quite the opposite. Yeah. Even if we need more resources, you take the procurement system, it's a disaster. For example, I used to head the oversight board for Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty back in the Reagan and Bush administrations. For peculiar reasons, we were considered a private corporation, even though we were funded by Congress in Delaware. Therefore, we did not come under the rules of procurement of the federal government. So when we ordered a transmitter, we could do it at a fraction of the price of the Voice of America, not because our engineers are better, although we thought they were. They didn't have to fill a room with all these books and regulations, reinventing wheels, reinventing light bulbs and everything else, and so we could bring it at a fraction of what they had to do. So if you modernize procurement, and so the F-35, put aside whether it's a crappy plane,
which everybody, it seems to be.
But the cost per copy is preposterous. One, a procurement of weapons system, when you look at the Valley and high technology, should be a matter of months or years. I mean, they do complicated, new, great products in a fraction of the time. And when they really need to get something done in defense, you have what they call skunk works. You pull it out of the current system, put it aside, and say, go to it. And they get it done. Yeah. So a radical reform of procurement.
These seem like, I mean, so basically you're talking, okay, well, you know, tax reform, entitlement reform, defense reform, or auditing of procurement. Why aren't, you know, these seem to be natural things for a Republican Party presidential candidate to be talking about, to be foregrounding, to be leading with. You know, the Republican Party says that it's a party of limited government, of effective government, and of small government. What has happened to the Republican Party where they don't seem to be talking about this? They want to save Medicare. They want to preserve Medicare. They want to preserve Social Security. They want to spend more.
One of the things that's happened, really, gosh, even before the New Deal, is the left learned how to occupy the high moral ground. So we may be inefficient. We may be wasteful. We may end up sometimes doing more harm than good, but our hearts are in the right place, and those who are against us are against people. You know, markets are always portrayed as cold, profits before people, whereas, you know, free markets are quite the opposite. They bring about cooperation. They break down barriers, succeed by meeting the needs and wants of others. You may not love your neighbor, but you want to sell to your neighbor. So it brings out the best in human nature. Now, human nature is a many-faceted thing.
So what the Republicans, though, are
so what the Republicans have to learn, it's not just Republicans. Politicians follow; they don't lead. Where the intellectual movement has to be, and this is where breakthroughs in education, where you can get around the professoriate in terms of education, make these points about what free markets are really about. And so if you're going into business, which a lot of people do, you don't see it as something somehow tainted, even though it produces goods, produces the stuff. It's somehow not quite a moral system. No, it is a moral system, but that has to be taught. And that's why you have this phenomenon of great entrepreneurs going off to the left. They don't connect, understand the wellspring of what made them possible.
In 2016, who do you like? Obviously, you're going to vote for Hillary in the end, but before that, what Republican candidates do you think are particularly not just likely to win, but are actually talking your talk?
What's happened is with 16 or 1,600, whatever the final number is, what's going to eventually happen is it's forcing. This is where we see with Senator Rand Paul putting out his proposal. Others are going to be doing the same. It's forcing people to put something out there, to distinguish themselves from others. It's not enough to say, I don't like my other 15 competitors. All right, what are you offering? And one of the things I think the base has learned from 2012 with Mitt Romney is it's not enough to criticize what is going on. What are you going to do? One of the things Reagan did was always put out the positive thing. Here's where we can move forward. So it brings people in.
You've mentioned Rand Paul a few times. Is he kind of your favorite at this point?
No, I'm looking at the whole field. He was one who put out the first comprehensive tax proposal, other than Senator Rubio, and who also is becoming a factor. So I want to see, one, what they're going to be putting out there, and then two, given the bias of the old mainstream media, who can show they can withstand the heat when you get boxed around. One of the things that Reagan did was show he could withstand the pressure.
One of the interesting things in 2012, you mentioned Mitt Romney. After he lost in what was clearly a winnable election, the GOP, various people did an autopsy in that. One of the things that they noted was that in 2004, George W. Bush, in his reelection campaign, got 44% of the Hispanic vote. Mitt Romney got 27% of the Hispanic vote, despite speaking Spanish and actually being, I guess, born or raised in Mexico for part of his childhood. In this section in the GOP autopsy about the 2012 election, they said, look, you know, if Hispanics hear you are not welcome in this country, they're not going to listen to the rest of the sentence. Donald Trump, who has emerged as a kind of gadfly in the Republican nomination process, has just, you know, he's talked about Mexicans as mostly being rapists and criminals. And I don't know, he said, you know, maybe some of them are decent people, you know, we'll give them that. What is going on with the GOP, both in terms of an inability, it seems, to acknowledge, you know, Hispanics or immigrants as adding to the American kind of experiment, and you know, what happens with that? Why has the party of Reagan has gone from being a very pro-immigration party to being very hostile to the idea of immigration?
Well, I think what you're going to find with the 16 or 18 candidates is most of them are in favor of outreach. Rand Paul has made it a point. Jeb Bush, even though he knows he's going to be vulnerable on the issue, spoke Spanish, which he does extremely well, in his opening campaign speech, in his announcement. So it's not a monolith. Now, the Democrats are going to try to portray as this time a war against Mexicans.
Right. So last time it was war against women. This time it's going to be war against Mexicans.
Yeah, but I think whoever emerges as a candidate is going to recognize you got to go out and make your appeal. For example, in 2012, once Romney knew he got the nomination, he should have gone to Senator Rubio and said, design an immigration proposal, and I'll be with you on it. And instead, he left himself open to vulnerable attack. Not to mention 2 months where the Democrats could run trash ads of $200 million, and the GOP doesn't respond, so they paint you. If you allow your opponents to paint you, you're done. You got to do your own agenda.
Hillary Clinton is, you know, has an air of an inevitability around her. Of course, she did in 2008, and it didn't work out. But I mean, at this point, it doesn't. We don't see the Barack Obama on the horizon. What is Hillary most vulnerable on?
She's vulnerable on a third term of Barack Obama. People sense, this is why there's this hoopla in the Democratic Party, Elizabeth Warren. Apparently she's not going to run, but there's a populist strain out there, not a populist strain so much as people recognize, and they can't put a finger on it, something's not working. Something's not right. That's why you see this minimum wage movement. Even though you can show on paper it's going to destroy this and hurt the very people you're supposed to be helping, the people sort of feel we got to do something to force it's not working. Maybe we've got to force it to work. You saw the same thing in the 1930s. And even though government was the villain, it's the markets get the rap for it.
Right.
So the key thing here, whether it's in terms of appealing to people, is honing your message and going after and asking for support. It's like making a sale. You're not going to buy my product most of the time unless I've gone out and persuaded you this is something you got to have.
Do you think Donald Trump is a negative influence in American politics? What
he's done is tap a strain, this strain of things are not working. In the sense of even take immigration. I'm for pro-immigration reform, and but why when we know somebody's a criminal, normally you deport. Why do you have sanctuary? People feel, well, the laws aren't being enforced and our voices are not being heard, so he's tapped into it. What he's forcing others to do is say, all right, how do we really move forward on this and make your case in a way, you know, take the greatest, one of the great chiefs of American politics, go back to the 1850s, Abraham Lincoln, running in Illinois. Southern Illinois, even though they was very pro-South,
right.
They greatly feared abolition and the idea of cheap black labor competing, you know, the whole thing. And so how do you make your case against Stephen Douglas, who says, oh, I'm for democracy. If you want to vote slavery in, go ahead. You know, isn't that the democratic way? To make the case, even without social media, without TV or radio, that no, why is slavery wrong, and why even if we may not like the black man, you better be concerned about slavery and the spread of slavery, how it affects you. Tough to do, but he figured out ways to do it. And so you can take seemingly tough things. This is not a great example because he ended up losing the election because he thought he had it won. But back in 1948, Tom Dewey got in a debate with his principal opponent over should they make illegal the Communist Party. Most Americans say, this is a threat. Why should we make it legal? Dewey defended it and won the primary, defending it because they had a debate and he marshaled the arguments.
And he said that it's, yeah, it's a bad thing, but in America you're allowed to think bad thoughts.
He made the tough case. And Lincoln learned it from appealing to juries up in the middle of the night, figuring out how do I make this case to the jury in a way in which they'll come around to my point of view.
And in that, if I'm remembering correctly, he talked about how, well, today we say that the black man is not the equal of the white and shouldn't have the same rights, and then tomorrow it'll be the immigrant or the Catholic, et cetera, and kind of showed how it's a slippery slope.
And if you can make a black man a slave, why can't a white man make you a slave? It's happening here. Yep. But it took articulation because there's a real fear out there.
Speaking of another hard case, thankfully one that's not in the United States, let's turn to Greece, which is melting down as we speak. A lot of people tend to look at the Troika or the massive European countries or the European Central Bank saying they're right and Greece is wrong. Others say Greece deserves more time or more slack. You tend to talk about this as that there are not hero and villain here. What's your take on Greece?
Both parties in that case are wrong. The Troika, their version of austerity is falling on the private sector. Raise the money, reduce the deficit, raise taxes. In Greece, national sales tax equivalent, the VAT, 23%. Payroll tax, we have it 15 in this country, 45. No wonder people don't pay it. So they crush whatever is left of the private sector.
And you're saying in austerity it should be that government spending gets cut, but not taxes getting cut.
The public sector takes a hit. And you reduce taxes, simplifying. Greece, two of Greece's neighbors, Bulgaria and Macedonia, have 10% flat taxes. They have troubles because Europe's in trouble, but their economies are a whole lot better than the economy of Greece. So you want a pro-growth program. Now, Britain, they didn't boast about it because I guess it doesn't appeal to voters, but in the 5 years of the Conservative government, for whatever its flaws, they reduced the number of public sector workers from 6.3 million to 5.3 million. And they're planning to do another 700,000 in the next 5 years. That is meaningful. That's what Greece has not done. Greece still has more bureaucrats per capita than any other country in Europe. So you go for pro-growth, and that's how you restructure things and make things happen. So all of Europe is getting crushed by taxation. Japan's getting crushed by taxation.
Should Greeks creditors, though, should they be calling all their loans, or then what do you do in that sense?
What Greek creditors should be doing is figuring out if you're a creditor to the banks, figure out how do I get equity and reorganize the banks in an economy that's reorganized where we have growth again and we'll come out just fine. Greeks, when they leave Greece, do very well. They're very successful here, Australia and elsewhere. So they have that entrepreneurial spirit from dealing with the Mediterranean going thousands of years back.
Well, that is reminiscent of another hot spot in the global economy, China, where, under communism, Chinese people in China were poor. Everywhere else in the world they were doing well. So we know it's the institutions, the kind of economic frameworks, political frameworks. What's your take on what's happening in China? We've seen like incredible volatility and drops in the Chinese stock market, and it looks like the economy may be imploding. What do you think?
Well, in the stock market, it's gone up 150%, so going down 30 or 40 is not hardly a 1929. But China is having to, I think they, one hand, realize they got to make reforms. They got to liberalize their capital markets. They have 44 million small businesses, which make up 2/3 of the economy, but they're sort of in the twilight zone in terms of finance. So they got to make changes there. And on the other hand, they don't like the stock market to drop because they think it reflects badly on the government. So they've got this ongoing tension that they've got to work out.
Milton Friedman used to say that economic freedom ended up leading towards political freedom because if you liberalized economies and dictators and tyrants were more willing to open up the economy before the political process, but then when people get rich, they start lobbying for political rights. Do you think that's happening in China, where as a rising middle class comes on, they want to have more transparency. They want to have simpler, more open government.
It's not so much even basic about government, is if I'm allowed to make choices on what job I take, where I live, what I own, what I buy, what I sell, well, why should I have to put up with this idiot commissar who is mucking things up? And so one thing leads to the other. Now, one of the reasons why you've seen this crackdown in China in recent years is precisely these forces are rising up. How do you contain them? And that's what they haven't quite figured out yet. So yes, Friedman ultimately is right. And the key thing is, what you want to encourage China to do, without looking like an imperialist, is continue with reforms where you're going to get more of these tensions in the future. And the fact that capital is leaving China shows that people are not convinced that the government's going to work it out, so they want to hedge their bets. And yeah, and the fact that Chinese have capital to export is a testament to what the country's done in the last 35 years. So you want those reforms to continue. If you want to have Shanghai as a capital center, one of the reasons why Hong Kong has done so well even after the turnover is they still have a court system where people trust that in terms of commercial law, commercial disputes, rather than Shanghai. So if you want to be a center, you've got to have all the appurtenances of what we have here, and more sophisticated capital markets, commercial law, so you can resolve these disputes without having it being a party matter. So, but life is never simple. It always looks messy.
Okay, well, that's a good way to end it. I want to thank you, Steve Forbes, for talking to Reason TV.
Thank you.
For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
Donald, good to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Steve.
And congratulations again for being on the billionaires list.
Oh, good.
We always underestimate you, but...
we do, but that's okay. That's all right.
Those who deal with you underestimate you and live to regret it.
It's always good to be underestimated.
I have to ask you, one, when are you going to make a decision on running for president? And two, if you do it, is it going to be as a Republican or an independent?
Well, I am a Republican, and I would run as a Republican. And I have a lot of confidence in the Republican Party. I don't have a lot of confidence in the president. I think what's happening to this country is unbelievably bad. We're no longer a respected country. You go throughout the world, and I deal with many of the same people that you deal with, and they can't believe what they're getting away with in terms of other countries, whether it's China or the OPEC nations or whatever. So I would run as a Republican if I decide to do that.
Do you have a deadline in mind where you say go, no go?
I do. It'll be June. And I'm doing Celebrity Apprentice. I'm not allowed to announce anything during that period. That starts on Sunday night at 9 o'clock for 2 hours.
Right.
And it's been a big hit.
Again.
No, thank you. It's been a big hit. You've been watching it go and just keep going. This is season 11. So I can't do anything during that time. And I'll be announcing sometime after the season of Celebrity Apprentice.
Terrific. The other day, the head of 3M said that President Obama is anti-business. Do you get the same feeling that he does?
Well, I don't know that it's anti-business or he just really doesn't know exactly what to do. And I'm afraid it probably is the second thing. I don't see him necessarily as anti-business. I think that he is not sophisticated in the ways of business. He hasn't dealt with the people that you've dealt with and that I've dealt with. I deal with China, as an example, a lot. It is never easy. And I've made some very big deals with the Chinese. I've come out on top. I've come out in great shape. I sell apartments to Chinese people. I get along great with them. It's not like, anti-China. I just think it's ridiculous that we allow them to do what they're doing to this country with the manipulation of the currency that you write about and understand, and all of the other things that they do. And frankly, if I were them and if I could get away with it, I take my hat off to them, frankly. They do get away with it. And I hire companies all the time, and it's so hard for our companies to compete against Chinese companies. I mean, these companies have such an advantage, whether it's glass for a curtain wall or whether it's, and you use the term because you know what's happened, sheetrock. I mean, they used to give us sheetrock, just give it. And everybody that was unfortunate enough to use Chinese sheetrock had problems. I mean, problems like where people were dying from it. The good news, Steve, our product is much better, but with the manipulation of their currency, it's very, very, very hard for our companies to compete.
First, in China itself, put the currency aside, do you find there are local barriers, trade barriers, other barriers that make it much more difficult to do business there than in other parts of the world?
Well, I find that I have many friends, and I'm a free trade person. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be talking to me right now. So I believe in free trade totally. I'd love to have everybody have free trade as long as it's fair. You know, we lose, essentially, if we look at it, a profit and loss, like $300 billion a year versus China. We don't need so much free trade for that, frankly. That's a company, if that were a company, you'd say, let's get rid of that company because that's not good. But I believe in fair trade, and I will tell you, I have many, many friends heading up corporations and people that do just business in China. They say it's virtually impossible. It's very, very hard to come into China. And yet we welcome them with open arms. If you look at environmental regulations where we're muzzling all of our factories for the green movement, and we have to, you know, spend millions and millions and millions of dollars per factory so that we don't pollute the air, which is wonderful. But do you really believe that China does that? Have you ever seen their factories? I mean, forget it. They never even heard of it. But they talk a good game. They talk great. And it's not only China. It's so many other. When you look at South Korea, what's happened over there, they signed a trade agreement that I've studied, and it's horrible for this country. I can't believe we can't make a much better agreement. And even that, they didn't want to send. They didn't want to sign that agreement until about 2 months ago, bombs started getting lobbed in by North Korea. All of a sudden they said, oh, we want to sign the agreement, we want to sign the agreement. It's a one-sided agreement, totally in favor of South Korea. So we send the George Washington aircraft carrier over to protect them, along with 17 destroyers. And all of a sudden they decide to sign the agreement. They weren't going to sign it. They embarrassed the president because after it was negotiated, they said, we're not going to, because as good as it wasn't good enough. So we send our ships over to protect them, and frankly,
So
that's
you
the
want to
reason.
send them the bill?
Well, yeah. Why are they paying us? They make hundreds of billions of dollars from us with their LG televisions that I buy by the thousands, because frankly, you can't buy any American manufacturer practically. So I buy them by the thousands for hotel rooms and places that I have. And I'm saying, and it's a wonderful product, everything's great, but they make a fortune on us. And I'm saying, why aren't they, when we turn on, you know, when you turn on just the ignition, you turn on that ignition for that little aircraft carrier that probably cost $1 million, okay? So we're sending these ships over to North Korea. I mean, why aren't they paying for this? Why don't they pay for their protection? You look at Saudi Arabia, where we have troops in Saudi Arabia, and they pay us nothing. The whole thing is amazing. Now, in Saudi Arabia, by the way, of all of the terrorists, every one of them sent their families back to Saudi Arabia. They didn't send them to Iraq. They didn't send them. Everyone except one, their family, they were put on planes and sent back to Saudi Arabia the day before the World Trade Center came down. So we have troops in Saudi Arabia, and they don't pay us. Now, you know, and then you look at our deficits and you look at what's going on. I travel the world, Steve. I see airports being built in Abu Dhabi. I see airports in Qatar, which they would prefer that you say Qatar. I see airports being built in different parts of the world. We're like a third world nation. You come into LaGuardia Airport with the sign that's made out of, I love New York, with the sign that's made out of like 2x4s that are 25 years old and rotting, that they paint white with a little apple in the middle. We're like a third world nation. And they're only there for this, for us. I mean, if you look at China, going back to China, we're rebuilding China. They're making all of our products. There's no reason, when Ben Bernanke said recently about jobs that it's going to be 5 years before we get our real job picture back. 5 years. And everybody said it was a long time. I said, why would it ever come back if we're making all of our products in China? So it amazes me the lack of intelligence that this country and our representatives seem to have. But we are going down And it's very unfortunate, Steve.
So is this why, as you say, the U.S. is the laughing stock of the world?
I believe they're the laughing. I don't believe. I can tell you that I meet with many very important people from China, from other places. Now, of course, they're not going to speak the same way today that they did, let's say, 6 months ago, before I started talking about the presidency. But they cannot believe they're getting away with these things. And by the way, I do it the same. I'm not angry at them. I take my hat off to them. But they cannot believe they get away with what they're getting away with. And yes, this country is the laughingstock of the world. We are the whipping post of the world.
So among recent U.S. presidents, which one do you think has done the best job? Which one do you like? Which one do you think you could model yourself on?
Well, to me, there's no contest. I mean, I think Ronald Reagan was one of the great presidents, period, not just recently. I thought he had the demeanor. I thought he had the bearing. I thought he had the thought process. I just thought, you know, it was very interesting. People forget Iran, they had our hostages, and Jimmy Carter was the president, and it was pathetic. We'd still have those hostages there today if a Jimmy Carter were still president. And Ronald Reagan said something to the effect that they won't be there one day if I'm president. As soon as he was elected, amazingly, the hostages were released. It was amazing, right? But it wasn't amazing to me. And he meant it. He wasn't playing games. He meant it. They will not be there for one day. He didn't even say return the hostage. He said they will not be there for one day. As soon as the election was over, the hostages were released. Had Jimmy Carter won that election, would have been a very sad day for the country for a lot of other reasons. But, you know, that whole hostage situation. We had respect. We were respected as a nation. And that's one of the reasons I really loved Ronald Reagan as president.
The casino, hotel business. Nevada's taken a hit. Atlantic City's taken a hit. Do you see it starting to come back, either with the consumer or businesses? How is that trending now?
Well, it's become a very competitive business. And, you know, well, you covered me over the years with the casino business. I made a lot of money in the casino business early on when I had them private. I then levered them up, was able to take the money out, did very well with it. You know, I invested in Manhattan and other places and took them public. And so they were always, when I really didn't run them very much, when they were public, they were always highly levered and, you know, again, took them public and sort of sold them. But I've watched the casino business over the years, and it's a really, it's, you know, it can be a wonderful business, but today it's so much competition, whether it's Las Vegas or Atlantic City, and I guess in particular Atlantic City. And what's happened is you have Indian casinos all over the place.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, somebody ought to look into getting some tax from them because they call themselves sovereign lands. They talk about their sovereign land.
Talk about
and yet,
cigarette taxes.
by the way, federal government built a right. No cigarette taxes, no nothing. And by the way, we need a highway because a lot of people are coming. Federal government build a highway right to our reservation, which is a sovereign nation. We're not going to pay for the highway. And build schools. We want school aid. We want this aid. We want every form of aid. But as far as taxes are concerned, we're not going to pay any.
So they make the Chinese look amateurs.
They're making a fortune. And they have really, you know, hurt and or destroyed the casino industry in this country. And what you do in terms of the ones that have to pay taxes. Plus, they give you odds, they give you this, they give you all sorts of things because they're not paying taxes. So what's happened with the Indian reservations is absolutely unbelievable. The lobbyists have done an unbelievable job. Many of them aren't Indians. You know, I had a very famous statement, they don't look like Indians to me. And they put it on 60 Minutes. It became a... And you know what the end of 60 Minutes was? And I didn't relent from that statement. I went before Congress, and they said, how dare you make that statement? And I'm sitting here with a room full of people that look just like you, Steve, and just like me. And they have less Indian blood maybe than we do, okay? And they're running reservations. And I'm saying to myself, they don't look like Indians. And I didn't relent. And then at the end of the 60-minute piece, the conclusion was that Trump is right. So it's a scam, and it's huge. It's huge numbers of dollars. It's billions and billions of dollars. And the Indian reservations really have hurt other places like Las Vegas and like Atlantic City, which pay a lot of tax.
Commercial real estate. What do you see happening there? Is it some areas doing okay, others not, or is there a national trend?
Well, New York is doing great. I will tell you, whether it's 40 Wall Street or whether it's Trump Tower or any of the other things that we own is doing great. Outside of New York is a whole different ballgame. You know, it's funny, every time something comes up in New York, I want to buy it, and I bid. and I say I'm going to get it because I'm way overpaying, and somebody buys it for twice as much as I'm bidding. So New York is doing well. Certain prime areas are doing well. I'm in lots of different areas. We're in Los Angeles, where I have a lot of land and, you know, right on the ocean, on the Pacific Ocean. And it's sort of good if you have. One thing I really have learned, and I hate the expression location, because it's so overused, because I've seen a lot of guys with good locations lose their shirt. And I've seen a lot of really smart people with not such good locations make a fortune. So I always say talent over location. But I just noticed that when you have that right piece of property, whatever it might be, including location, it tends to work well in good times and in bad times. But the city of New York itself is doing well. Some other locations throughout the country are doing really well. I have a lot of things in Palm Beach. Palm Beach is through the roof. Palm Beach is doing fantastically. It had its only setback. I remember in the 1990s where you covered me when things were very tough and lots of guys were going bankrupt. And as you know, I never did, but I had some tough times in early 1990. And I remember that Palm Beach never went down. And this time, it was the only place in the whole country where actually housing values stayed the same and rose, even during what I call the real estate depression, the great real estate depression of 1990. And it's very interesting because now I look at Palm Beach, and it did finally take a hit after all these years, and it was a Bernie Madoff hit, because he was ground zero relative to Palm Beach. I mean, Palm Beach was Bernie Madoff territory. And now Palm Beach is doing fantastically well. It's really doing well again. You know, it took a while to get rid of that Madoff. What he took out of that community was unbelievable, billions. But now Palm Beach is doing very well. But overall, I think commercial real estate's doing okay. In some areas, it's doing great.
And are the banks going to get through this cycle?
Well, the funny thing is that the commercial real estate never really hit the banks so badly. You know, they kept talking about, and I'd read also in Forbes and lots of other places, Watch, as they said, oh, the next big cycle is commercial. It's never really hit, because it didn't get as bad as people thought, and, you know, you'd restructure loans.
Tenants.
Yeah, and tenants came, enough tenants came, and you'd also make deals with banks. So it never really hit. You know, we thought that the next big, we had the big residential meltdown, and the next big was going to be the commercial. The commercial never happened. And this commercial cycle was much different, because there wasn't that much product. If you remember in the 1990s, there was so many buildings being built, and they were empty all over the place. You never really had that because you didn't have the money, the banks didn't loan the money, and you didn't have the money to build. So this cycle was much different. But the big meltdown for commercial has not happened and won't happen because we're long past the date. And some commercial actually is doing very well. The one thing with the banks is they're not loaning money. I mean, they're not loaning money if you want to buy a house. They're not loaning money to people with all the vacant houses and empty houses that you have all over the place. The banks are not doing their job. They're not giving money to people that want to buy a house, even at a half price, and prices that are a lot lower than half. And until they start putting out money, you know, they were given a lot of money, but they're not loaning it. Now, if I want to finance Trump Tower or a building where you have great tenants and like Gucci and others sitting there paying rent, they're all over the place. But if you want to build something, or if you want to loan Mr. and Mrs. Smith money for a house someplace, they're not doing their job.
Are your kids more conservative than you?
Well, I try to teach them. I don't think the answer is yes. I try to teach them to be a little bit conservative because, you know, they've seen some good times and they've seen some very smart deals that we've made over the past number of years. And we've done a lot of great licensing deals where we licensed the name Trump, and we've made a lot of money with that. And the beauty of that is, and we want to see everything be successful, but the beauty of that is you don't have the risk that a developer would have. If a job is good, it's good. That's wonderful. But if a job is bad, we don't have $250 million or $400 million into it. We have nothing into it. And yet we get a big chunk of it and, you know, lots of other good things. So it's been a formula that I think nobody's done like we've done, and nobody's come close to doing it like we've done. And we've had some wonderful successes with that. But I'm trying to get them to be conservative because they haven't really seen times like you and I have witnessed over the past.
How do you teach them? Because obviously mistakes are painful, but you do learn from them. That sort of get their feet wet without getting boiled. Or
well, I watch them, and they're really capable kids. They love what they're doing, and if they didn't love it, they wouldn't be doing it well. But I do watch them, and we're careful as to what deals we make. And I just, you know, I just want them to be very conservative. And honestly, they don't have to make deals. They could just run what we have and lead a very nice life. I say, what do you want to risk a lot of money for when we have all of this stuff happening that's so positive? But we're very, very conservative in what we do. And yet, I bid on things, and it's very hard today. I mean, it's sort of things are happening that, I don't know if that's good or bad, because last time when things were happening, all of a sudden people said, look at these mistakes. But when I bid on things, the things usually sell for much more money than we would think that they should sell for.
You once said, in terms of real estate, you don't retire. For some reason, you just stay with it. You can't let it go.
I don't know what it is about real estate people, but they get old, but they never retire. I don't think I've ever had a friend that retired in real estate. And I think what it is, our face goes down the tubes, but we can build a beautiful building someplace, and we view the building as a reflection of us. And whether it's Harry Helmsley, who was a great guy, who finished sadly because he was a great, great real estate man, and he married Leona, and I mean, I know that story so well because I knew him so well. He was such a great friend of mine, but very sad the way he went out. He retired, he didn't retire in the true sense. He was just sort of forced to stop. But it was very, very sad the way that all ended, because he was truly a great, brilliant real estate man. But people in this business, they seem not to stop. I mean, I know friends that I used to be always the youngest. And now I'm not the youngest anymore by far, but I feel young. But I feel young in this business, whereas other friends of mine that, they have a corporation, they have some company that they work, a big public company, and in 65 years they're gone. It's like they retire. My father used to have an expression, because I told you he loved to work, and he used to say, to retire is to expire. And I see it a lot. A friend of mine who's the head of a bank, and he's a vibrant guy, and he retires. You see him 2 years later, and it's like, what happened to him? Look at him, what happened? So I believe that you work, but for some reason, people in the real estate business just don't retire. There's no such thing as like retirement.
So what do you do about succession? You have three up-and-comers.
Well, I do, and maybe 5. I really have good children. Your father, who was a friend of mine, who I thought the world of him. And he obviously did something right, because you've kept it all going beautifully with the so-called kids. I have it's a very tough decision, because you say, do you leave a bigger chunk to one? Do you break it up evenly? Do you do this? Do you do that? I think my inclination is to put, for instance, Eric loves the club business. We've really built a big club business, and it's been doing well. We're on the cover of a major club magazine that we're the most profitable one in the business now, and it's great. And we've done really well with it, and I like the business. It works for my personality. And Eric seems to love that business. And Don loves running buildings. He loves 40 Wall Street. He loves Trump Tower. He loves other buildings that we have. And I'm sort of thinking that if it keeps going like this, I can put one in charge of certain aspects. But it's very complex. In a way, it's the most complex thing, and you understand that through your family and your children and, what's going to happen here and there. It's a very, very important decision and a very complex decision. And you and I have seen many fights over the years, and we've seen fights of, individuals that are business people, and we've seen family fights. And I would say, and we could mention a couple of them, but I would say the most vicious fights I've ever seen, whether it's Koch or Milstein or this or that, the most vicious fights are those inter-family fights when it doesn't work. So it really is a very important decision as to what happens when we're gone.
Well, hopefully neither of us will be gone.
Hopefully we'll never go.
Donald, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. An honor. If you're going to achieve anything, you have to take action. And action is what Trump University is all about. But action is just a small part of Trump University. Trump University is about knowledge, about a lot of different things. Above all, it's about how to become successful.
Donald Trump is without question the world's most famous businessman. As a real estate developer, he has reshaped the New York skyline with some of that great city's most prestigious and elegant buildings. Trump Tower, for example, with its spectacular marble and gold foyer, attracts some 2.5 million visitors a year. Mr. Trump is also a leading player in the casino and entertainment industries. And today, he is best known to millions of viewers worldwide as the star of The Apprentice. Mr. Trump is the author of many books, including The Art of the Deal, How to Get Rich, and Think Like a Billionaire. Now Donald Trump brings his years of experience to the world of business education. With the launch of Trump University, he makes the very best of America's business education available to you and others like you who seek a life of success, fulfillment, and prosperity. Mr. Trump, you made your name and your fortune by becoming America's most successful real estate developer. In recent years, you've become equally visible as an entertainer, yes, but also as an educator, through The Apprentice, through your books, and now with the launch of Trump University. My question is this: in the business world, why is education so important?
It gives you an advantage, it gives you an edge. In fact, sometimes it gives you a very big edge. So people with education just have the advantage over people without. It doesn't mean that other people aren't going to be successful, but they certainly don't have the advantage.
Let's talk for a moment about your own education. You spent your later high school years at the New York Military Academy. You went on to graduate from the prestigious Wharton School of Business of the University of Pennsylvania. How did what you experienced then in your education contribute to the success you enjoy today?
Well, I think maybe more than anything else, my education gave me confidence. I went to Wharton. Wharton School is, to me, and probably to most people, including Business Week, the #1 business school in the world. And I did very well. I was a good student. I liked being a student. I enjoyed it. People are sometimes surprised to hear that I was a really good student, but that's okay. But I liked it. I liked academic life. But beyond everything else, I was able to compete, and more than compete, with very, very smart people. And when I came out into the world, in addition to what I knew, I had a sense of confidence.
You've learned from mentors, notably your father, Fred Trump. For someone in pursuit of success, what do you see as the value of personal mentorship from your experience?
Well, my father was my great mentor. He was my friend and he was my mentor, and I learned a lot just by sitting at his knee. And you learn from being with people that are smart and being with people that have just done it. And you learn a lot. And if you don't learn, you're not very smart. And you know what? That's okay. It doesn't mean you're not going to be happy. It means you're not going to be very successful. But you may be a guy that's not so successful that's happy, and in the end, maybe that's the most successful person of all. But you're not going to make great wealth if you don't learn. Having mentors is a great thing if they're the right mentors. Having Fred Trump for a dad was really lucky for me. I was very lucky. And, you know, you have to be a little bit lucky in life. And whether we learn at Trump University or don't learn at Trump University, there's always going to be the element of luck. And I tell that to people, and I shouldn't be telling them, because they'll say, well, if it's luck, then what do I have to study for? I'll just roll the dice. The fact is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And as you learn and as you progress, you will get more and more successful if you're doing it the right way. But there is always an element of luck.
Let's talk for a moment about business education in America today. You see the results of it, good and bad, in the people you deal with every day. In your view, what's positive and what could be improved about the business education we have right now?
Well, oftentimes business education today, and I see it all the time, kids come out of college, the best colleges, Wharton and Harvard and Stanford and some of the great business schools, and they'll come out and they won't have practical experience. And I think one thing that business colleges should be focusing on more is practical. In other words, get out there and do it. There's too many case studies that aren't practical. So I see a tremendous lack of practicality in what people are learning today in business school.
So now you've launched Trump University. What does this new venture mean to you?
Well, Trump University is something that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the concept. I'm proud of what's happened. And it really began a few years ago. I'd go and make a speech, and I'd make it for a group that normally would get 300 or 400 or 500 people, and over 10,000 people would show up. And I'd say, what's going on over here? And they wanted to hear what I had to say, and that's a great honor. And then I'd go and do something else, and people would rent a ballroom, and they'd call me up, and they'd say they needed a bigger ballroom, and then they'd call me up again, and they needed to go to the Jacob Javits Convention Center. So I felt there was a lot of people, or there would be a lot of people, and are a lot of people out there that want to learn something, and they want to learn it from me. And I'm just honored by it.
So all over the world, it's not just in America, because Trump University will be online. It's going to have an international reach. All over the world, people will be buying courses and programs carrying your name. What do you most want them to get out of their membership in Trump University?
Well, I want them to get knowledge. I want them to get success. I want them to be really successful, because most of the people that go to Trump University are going to be ambitious people. They're going to be type A personalities. They're going to be people that want to succeed. Now, there are different forms of success. Happiness is a form of success. But monetary success, I think, is really what I'm looking to give. And the people that are going to study under Trump University and in Trump University are going to be people that want to be successful in business, and we're going to make them successful in business.
The faculty of Trump University, the people who are going to be doing the teaching, are emphasizing what they call learning by doing, a big focus on action, on testing new knowledge out by trial and error. From what you're saying about the missing element in current business education, that would seem to have a relevant value to you.
I think that's true, and relevant value is something that's very, very hard to define. Value is a very hard word to define, but I have terrific people coming in, and we're going to have professors and adjunct professors that are absolutely terrific, terrific people, terrific brains, successful, the best. We are going to have the best of the best. And honestly, if you don't learn from them, if you don't learn from me, if you don't learn from the people that we're going to be putting forward, and these are all people that are hand-picked by me, then you're just not going to make it in terms of the world of success. And that's okay, but you're not going to make it in terms of success.
Well, the chances are that the person watching this conversation has made a decision to create greater success and wealth in their life. What are the essential qualities of mind required?
Well, I think that, number one, the people that are watching us right now are really people that are very driven, and they're driven toward financial success and success generally. I believe that Trump University, if I can teach one thing, and there are going to be many things that we're going to be very specific, but if I can teach one thing, it's you must love what you're doing. If you don't love what you're doing, you'll never, ever be successful. You and I can work hours and hours on trying to teach somebody something, but if that person doesn't love what he or she really is doing, we're wasting our time. The other thing is never, ever give up. Just keep going forward. Never stop. It may seem like you have no chance. It may seem like it's over. Never, ever quit. If you're a quitter, I hope you quit right now and stop watching immediately, because you'll never make it.
You've written about quite often about the power of positive thinking, and in fact your father, I believe, was a friend of Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote a famous book of that name. Obviously, having a positive attitude feels better, but does it really impact business results?
The Power of Positive Thinking was one of the great books ever written, and one of the great business books, actually, in a sense, although Norman Vincent Peale didn't mean it to be a business book. But Power of Positive Thinking, when you think of it, it makes so much sense, and I'm a big believer. But I'm also a believer in the power of negative thinking, and the reason is that you really want to guard against the downside. You can't just go in like it's a big bowl of roses. If you think somewhat negatively, and I say that in all due respect, and keep your guard up. You know, the fighters have an expression, keep the left up. They mean keep the left up and block from the punches. Having a little bit of negativity is not so bad, because you'll keep that guard up and you'll keep your defenses up. So having a little bit of negativity is not so bad. But overall, the power of positive thinking, wonderful.
Your latest book is called Think Like a Billionaire. When did you first think like a billionaire? Before you became one or afterwards?
Well, I really think that I began thinking like a billionaire when I was in high school and when I was in preschool. I've always had this kind of thought process that was very positive but very guarded. And that's what I mean by negativity. But it was positive but guarded. And I think that when I wrote the book, and the reason it became a #1 bestseller, and even, I guess, to a certain extent, a bigger bestseller, was the one I wrote just before it, How to Get Rich. Trump, How to Get Rich. And it's been a tremendous selling book. I happen to think the title is better. I think the books are equal, and maybe Billionaire is actually better. But the title of How to Get Rich, I mean, that says it all. That says it better than Think Like a Billionaire. Think Like a Billionaire is wonderful, but people aren't relating to it and can't relate to it as much as Trump, How to Get Rich. But these two books became #1 bestsellers. They've been terrific books, and they're going to be a big part of our course because it does set out my thinking.
Your first book, The Art of the Deal, begins with a simple sentence that many people might find hard to understand. You say, "I don't do it for the money." Can you explain that?
Well, I do it because I love it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. I have bad days, I have good days, I have days somewhere in the middle. But the end result is I love what I'm doing, and I don't do it for the money. And I make money because probably I'm not doing it for the money. I do it, and I do it well. I'm the biggest developer in New York. I love building buildings. I have a lot of fun building buildings. The fact is, I do it for fun. I do it for game. I do it for sport. I happen to make a lot of money doing it. If I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't really love what I'm doing, I wouldn't be successful. I wouldn't be sitting with you today, and I wouldn't have Trump University.
And what's the implication of that for someone watching this who wants to create greater wealth? What's the message in that, do you think?
Well, the message is you have to love what you do. If you do it for the money alone, it's probably not going to work. I have friends where I tell them, get out of this business, which is a good business, and go into another business, which isn't as good a business, because they like the other business better. They'll do better in a less good business, so to speak, than they will in the better business because they like it.
You're famous or notorious for your work ethic. You've got everything that most people would dream of, and you don't let up. This quality of self-discipline, is it something that you were born with, or can it be learned?
Well, I think self-discipline can be learned. I think you really can teach yourself self-discipline. If you want something badly enough, you'll probably have discipline. If you're going to be a great athlete, you have to work hard. If you're going to be a great business person, you have to work hard. It's no different. It's a different form of work. But self-discipline is a very important word toward success, and you really have to have it. And if you don't have it, most likely you're not going to be successful.
You're also renowned as a developer for your obsession with quality, from the big picture architectural concept right down to the last doorknob. How has that contributed to your success?
Well, it doesn't have to be all quality. I mean, I know a lot of people that make junk, and they make it inexpensively, and they sell it inexpensively, and there's a market for it, and that's fine. But it doesn't always have to be quality. I mean, not everybody can make the best building. Not everybody can make the best golf course or hotel or whatever it is you may be doing, because the world doesn't want the best. I mean, not everybody's going to spend $1,000 a night for a hotel room. People have to spend $20 a night for a hotel room and $10. So you can't always do the best. But you can do relatively the best, and you can do a really good job of it, and you can be very, very successful at doing it. I happen to choose high-end and the best. For me, that works. But not everybody can do that. And if the world did that, it would be a pretty competitive and very sad place.
Mr. Trump, so far as I know, you've never been accused of false modesty. Is self-promotion for you a personal sport, or is it a business strategy that others can learn from?
Well, I don't consider myself a good promoter. I really consider myself a great builder. I think I build the best product, and then all of a sudden you see this building going up and you see it selling out, and everyone says, oh, Trump did such a great promotion. The fact is that if you take, like, the Trump World Tower opposite the United Nations that was recently completed, it's a great building. It's the tallest residential building in the world. I built it. I fought on it. I fought the unions. I fought the world. I fought financials. I fought everything. And then I get it built, and it becomes a tremendous success. And everyone said, he's such a great promoter. It had nothing to do with it. The building promoted itself because it was great architecture. Herbert Muschamp in the New York Times recently wrote that it's a great building. I mean, he gave it a tremendous review. And other people have as well. It's just a great building, and it's self-promoted. So I've always considered myself to be a great builder, not a great promoter. Some people would say that I'm a very good promoter. I consider myself to be a great builder.
So the lesson in that would be, if I'm understanding you right, don't focus on making your name famous. Focus on the quality of what you do.
I think that's true. I mean, the name will follow. I know people that want to build up their name, but they haven't done anything. I say you have to do something. You can't just do that. You need the credibility of doing something. And yes, I think that's very well put.
There's an art to making money, and there's also an art to keeping money. We might speak here of financial intelligence, the ability to manage cash. How important is that ability, and how can it be developed?
Well, managing cash is very important. Managing your wealth is very important. And even myself, in the early 90s, I had some really difficult times. The real estate markets crashed. To be honest, I wasn't totally focused. I was having such a good time. It was coming in too easily. And I went back to work, and I did a great job. I've always said the greatest job I've ever done was from 1990 to 1994. That was the greatest. There were 4 years of hell. And other people went bankrupt, and you'll never hear from them again. And my company became bigger and bigger and stronger to a point where now I'm one of the largest privately held companies in New York, and it's been a real success story. And I believe the Guinness Book of World Records had me as the greatest personal financial comeback of all time. I don't know if that's an honor or not, because I don't view it as a comeback. I view it as just a steady stream of work. Some days are good, some days are bad. But the fact is that I have had a lot of fun, and I've had a good time doing what I'm doing.
Well, whether we call it an honor or not, it certainly could be an education and an inspiration. What carried you through those difficult times?
Well, I think more than anything else, it was hope. I really felt that I was going to get through it. I owed billions of dollars to banks. Some of it was personally guaranteed. Hundreds and hundreds of millions was personally guaranteed. The real estate markets crashed. So I can't completely blame myself. Congress changed tax laws, which changed real estate and what you do, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, right in the middle of it, they changed the laws. So sometimes you're a victim of circumstance. Sometimes you're your own worst enemy. But the fact is that I really viewed hope. And I came up with an expression that a lot of people have since used, and this was done in 1990. Survive till 95. That was my expression. Survive till 95. I felt that if I could survive till 95, just keep it going by pennies, by pennies, by pennies, that the markets would change and things would get better. And that's what happened. I kept what I had. I survived till 95. I was a wheeler dealer like nobody. I was out every night having dinner with somebody, whether it was a bank or this or that. I mean, it was somebody always having to do with business. If I went out on a personal dinner, I felt I was doing myself a tremendous disservice. I did nothing but go out to lunches and dinners with bankers and very important people, having only and exclusively to do with my business. And in the end, I survived till 95. The market started changing. The world started getting great. And now my company is much bigger, much stronger than it ever was before, including in the 80s, when a lot of people said, oh, Trump was so great in the 80s. Now they say Trump is greater in the year 2000 and 2005 and the 2000s than he was in the 1980s. So I went back to work. I never, ever worked harder in my life. And now I can honestly say, and everybody else agrees with me, including every newspaper, every business magazine, and everybody that watches The Apprentice on television, that I'm better now than I was, by far, than I was in the 1980s.
Speaking of The Apprentice, in the very first episode of the first series, you gathered the candidates in the New York Stock Exchange, and then you sent them out onto the streets to sell lemonade. Why is the ability to sell such an essential business skill?
I know many, many people, and if they're not salesmen, it's not going to work. They can have the greatest gidget or gadget. They can have the finest piece of real estate. If you can't have and don't have the ability to sell, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. Now, a lot of people make up for the lack of salesmanship by pure brain power, and it can work. You don't have to be a good salesman. Maybe you'll get somebody who is a good salesman to work for you, maybe, if you're lucky enough. But the ability to sell is a wonderful asset, and it's something that the people at Trump University will be very, very cognizant of. It's going to be a very important part of our classes. They used to have classes many, many years ago. My father would take salesmanship classes, and whether it was Arthur Murray or this or that, old line salesmanship classes, and he always felt that was good for him. We are going to have classes in salesmanship at Trump University. It makes your life very much easier. Now, salesmanship's an interesting word. You can learn, you can study, you can do whatever you want to do. Most salesmen are, to an extent, born with it. But if you're not born with it, you can become good. Maybe not great, but you can become good, very adequate. Usually, when I see somebody who's a great salesman, they've sort of always been naturally a great salesman. But you can learn. And by the way, the great ones can get better.
Can you think of an example of someone you admire with those skills? Is there anybody comes to mind?
Well, when you look at salesmen and when you look at people throughout the world, I mean, usually it's the great business leaders that are good salesmen. Now, sometimes people are such good salesmen but not knowledgeable in other ways, and they sell bad concepts. That's the worst. Whether it's Hewlett-Packard, where somebody was a good salesman and sold a concept that obviously doesn't seem to work, or so many other deals where they sold it, but the concept was no good. So in that way, being a good salesman is a negative.
Let's suppose that I have a job, but I have the feeling that I want to start my own business. How would I know that I'm the right kind of person for the entrepreneurial life?
To me, that's the best question you've asked, and it's also the toughest. Somebody has a family, has a job, they have a nice job, they get X dollars a week, they don't have to worry about very much, it's not going to be great, they're not going to live in Palm Beach, but you know what? They have a job, and it's income coming in. The hardest thing to do, in my opinion, in business is to leave that job and become an entrepreneur, because you're risking your wealth, you're risking your family, your health, your family's health. You're really risking a lot. You have to know in your gut whether or not you have it to be an entrepreneur. Can you handle pressure? Can you handle all of the problems that you're going to be confronted with? And there'll be many, many problems. But the toughest job that somebody has, in my opinion, in business, is to know when to get out of something and when to go in something, because that's a very, very risky proposition.
Who do you admire among the entrepreneurial community? Who exemplifies that spirit very well to you?
Well, there are so many great leaders today. When you look at Jeff Immelt of GE, he stepped into the legendary Jack Welch's shoes, and he's doing a fantastic job running General Electric. Just a fantastic job. And you look at so many different people. I mean, all you have to do is pick up the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Post, and you'll see people that have just done a fantastic job. In real estate, I'm one of those people. In so many other different fields, there are many, many different people. But for every person that's successful, there are many, many more that are unsuccessful. And we're going to make the people at Trump University successful. We're going to give them the clues to success.
So, as you say, of course, many people are in a job, in a career, and many of them are committed to staying there and making their success within the corporate world. Now, you own many companies, and you've mentored many employees. What guidance would you give to someone who wants to make a successful career within the corporate world?
Well, first of all, I'd say there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's terrific. Don't forget, Jack Welch made a tremendous success within the corporate world. You go up the corporate ladder. That's very different from an entrepreneur. And at Trump University, we're catering to both. There's nothing wrong with starting out at a low level at General Electric or NBC or so many different companies and going up, up, up the ladder, and then you become president and chairman of the company, and you make a lot of money. You don't make as much money as a successful entrepreneur, but you make a lot of money, and you lead a big team. So we're really going to be catering to both. I tell you, there are many people that are much better suited to be within the framework of a major corporation than to be within this other framework of being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurial skill and talent is very rare, very hard to find, and frankly, it's very scary.
As a young man graduating from a top business school, you had many career opportunities, and you chose real estate. What is it about real estate that you love so much that you go on doing it now, even though you don't have to?
Well, I think real estate, to me, it just has a feel, it has a touch. You know, I see so many people, they invest their money in the stock market, they lose their money goes down. You might as well just go to Las Vegas and roll the dice. You just have so many different problems with that. And real estate, you can live in it, you can touch it, you can see it, you can rent it. Even if you don't get as much rent as you were thinking you were going to get, you can rent it. But there's so many assets that I see to real estate. But I'm not here as a real estate person. I'm here as a business person. Trump University is going to be real estate, but it's going to be every other form of business. It's going to be every business. If you want to build a company, it doesn't have to be in real estate. Some of the great companies, you look at Microsoft and some of the great companies, they were built fairly recently, and they have very little to do with real estate, if nothing to do with real estate. So there are a lot of opportunities out there for wealth and the creation of wealth, and that's what we're going to teach. I happen to be in real estate. I happen to like real estate. I love the artistry of real estate. I have a friend that came to me. He's a very, very rich man. He lays cable in the streets. Okay, doesn't sound like much, but he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He'll make a penny a foot, and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he walked into Trump Tower 2 weeks ago, and he looked at me and he said, you know, I look at this great building, and your name is on it, and people know who you are. I make a lot of money, Donald, but I put cable in the streets. Nobody knows who I am. I can't get into a restaurant. But overall, he's happy. What can I tell you?
So Trump University is in the business of teaching people success. So if there's one step towards success that anyone watching this could take right now, what might that be?
I think the biggest step towards success is going to be sign up at Trump University. We're going to teach you about business. We're going to teach you better than the business schools are going to teach you. And I went to the best business school. We're going to teach you better. It's going to be a shorter process. It's not going to involve years and years of your life. It's going to be less expensive, and I think it's going to be a better education, and it's going to be what you need to know. It's not going to be a lot of different theory that doesn't matter and will never be put to use. It's going to be what you need to know. So we're going to teach you business. We're going to teach you life. We're going to teach you salesmanship. We're going to teach you what you need to know. And we're going to also make sure that no matter what you do, as I said before, you're going to love it. Because if you don't love it, it's never, ever going to work.
Donald Trump, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Two men, one message. Let's just talk about how this book actually got started. Mr. Trump, can you tell me why you suggested writing this book together?
Well, I've been a big fan of Roberts and of Rich Dad for so long. I've seen it, I've read it, everybody I know has read it, and he's just a very special man who I wanted to do something with. And we were making a speech together, and I listened to his speech. I liked it. He listened to my speech. I assume he liked it. You'd have to ask him, but I assume he liked it. And one day, after one of our speeches in front of a tremendous crowd of people, 61,500 people, he came up to me and he said, we ought to do something together. And I've had lots of #1 bestsellers, and he's had lots of #1 bestsellers, and we're just putting it all together.
Mr. Kiyosaki, how did you feel when Mr. Trump asked you to write this book with him?
Well, he's right. When I listen to his talk, he always talks about think big. Mm-hmm. And when we said, let's write a book together, I had to think big. And that's what I had. It was beyond reality at that moment. So I thank him for, sharing his celebrity with me.
Beyond reality television.
Yeah.
Mr. Trump, are you afraid of failing?
I'm not afraid of failing. Life, you look and you turn on the newscasts every night, and you see thousands of people killed in earthquakes and tsunamis and hurricanes and all of the problems and wars that we shouldn't even be in, and lots of different things. And when you see all of the problems in the world, what is there to be afraid of? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. To a certain extent, it all doesn't matter. And I tell people that because it takes pressure off. If it matters too much, they're going to be like basket cases. It really doesn't matter. You want to enjoy what you do. You want to do a great job for yourself and your family. But ultimately, in the scope of things, what really matters? And that does take a certain amount of pressure off. And I'm not sure that Robert agrees with my statement, but I see people, they're so intent on doing something, and it's so scary, and they can't even function properly because it's so important to them. And sometimes you say to yourself, it doesn't matter if it works, if it doesn't work. And that takes that real big, high level of pressure off, and you can perform better.
My answer to that is I think what we have in common also is we both went to military schools. Yeah. And military school is about discipline, about being bigger, about following orders, about leading. But what else we have in common is that we both failed. And he lost nearly $1 billion.
I lost a lot of money.
A lot of money.
But it was paper.
And I lost only lost $1 million. And I think what makes us better is when you wrote your book, The Art of the Deal, I was so impressed. But when you wrote The Art of the Comeback, and what it meant to come back from being down so far. And most people are terrified of losing $100, and here you're down $1 billion.
Billions.
And you come back. And I think that's what we have in common is once you've faced that much what everybody's afraid of, you're not as afraid anymore. I think that's really the difference. And for me personally, it was the best education I could have gotten was to find out where I made all my mistakes and rebuild my company.
You wouldn't want to do it again, but it was a great education.
But when I read Art of the Comeback, I said, this is a big man. That's when my respect for him grew, because Art of the Deal, he's telling about his successes. But when he wrote Art of the Comeback, that's when you grew in my eyes, is because most people will not admit their mistakes. Is that true?
Well, and also things happen. I mean, the market's changed. We had a real estate catastrophe in the early 90s, and a lot of very smart people that did a very good job got wiped out. And, I was a very hard fighter. Many of my friends went bankrupt. I never did, but they went bankrupt and out of business. And literally, some of them I've never heard from again. I've tried contacting them. They don't even want to contact because the fact is they feel horrible, and that was many years ago. But I fought very hard, never went bankrupt, made deals with banks, made all sorts of things. And in a certain way, I had a great time doing it, as crazy as it sounds. But you learn a lot about yourself through adversity.
A lot of the book is defining moments.
Yeah.
And then, what did you learn in military school? Because we have so many men and women in the service today. And wouldn't you say military school or military training is great for business?
Well, I loved it. I also found out it probably wasn't for me, but I loved it, and I did well in that system. I had to adjust to that system. I had a drill sergeant named Major DeBias, who was a really tough guy, and you couldn't get away with the wise guy cracks that you could make to other people. I mean, this guy used to come at you, and it wasn't like it is today, where if somebody whacks you in the face, they end up being thrown in jail for the rest of their life. Those guys were rough, and they would really punch you around, and I'm not advocating it, but I'll tell you something. You'll learn a lot better than you do nowadays, where the teachers are afraid to raise their voice to the students because they'll be thrown out of school. They get thrown out of school easier than the students get thrown out.
I totally agree.
A lot of interesting things I think Robert and I learned at a military academy. But I did. I learned the military wasn't necessarily for me, but I have great respect for the military.
The military did things my parents were not willing to do. And I think that's the biggest difference. And then I was 6 years in the Marine Corps after that, because it took me longer to get the lesson. But I learned the biggest lesson of all is how to overcome fear. So all these guys in Iraq and all this, they're going to come back. It's a terrible experience, but I think all of them will come back stronger and better for it if they don't let the experience beat them. Because a lot of the Vietnam guys, a lot of them, the experience beat them. But for me, it was I beat the terribleness of it. And I think that's what gives us the strength in business today. And, that's a defining moment in my life.
Well, let's talk about money a little bit. There are those who say that money doesn't bring happiness, or that money doesn't make you happy. I mean, is that true?
Well, I think it's true, but it certainly makes life a lot easier. If you can educate your children, if you can not have to worry about being able to afford a doctor when somebody's not feeling well in the family, it certainly makes life a lot easier. And I don't use the word happy, I use the word content. I think you're more content. And money ultimately, beyond a certain point, is just a scorecard. But you sort of love it. I mean, it's what we do.
It's a game, isn't it?
It is a game. It's a game. Ultimately, it's a game. You play the game. You want to play the game well. You don't like to lose.
Keep
and
score.
It's a scorecard.
Is it easier to become rich today than it was 30 years ago?
I'd say so. The internet and the communications are easier, and the leverage is easier. There's more ways of making money. But let me say this about people who say, that money doesn't make you happy. I've been without money, and anybody who says money doesn't make you happy obviously hasn't been broke yet, or that somebody gave them the money. Because when I didn't have money, Kim and I, it's our 20th anniversary this year, and when we didn't have money, we fought more. And we're a lot happier. It's a game. We keep score. We enjoy it. And as Donald says, if you're doing what you love, that's it. If you're working at something you don't love for money, that's misery. That's as good as going to hell, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Trump, do you think anybody can be rich?
No, I don't think anybody can get rich. I think, unfortunately, the world is not a fair place. I think you have to be born with a certain intelligence. And it doesn't have to be a super intelligence. It has to be a certain intelligence. You can't take somebody that's not a smart person and say, by the way, this is what you do, and here's your little card, and you're going to follow these rules and regulations, and you're going to become a rich person. The world is not fair. They come with this statement, all men are created equal. Well, it sounds beautiful, and it was written by some very wonderful people and brilliant people, but it's not true, because all people and all men aren't created. Now, today, they'd say all men and women. Of course, they would have changed that statement that was made many years ago. But the fact is, you have to be born and blessed with something up here. On the assumption you can become very rich.
And that's what the book is about, is that if you can't get rich in America, you can't get rich anywhere. I would say this is the easiest country. It's not that it's easier, but as a country, it's really designed for capitalists. It's designed for people who want to be rich. And that's our concern right now, is that I think life has gotten somewhat too easy for some people. And too many people have the entitlement mentality, rich or poor. Mm-hmm. They expect the government to take care of them. And our concern is that I think our problems today is globalization. Our government cannot protect us from the world today. The government cannot stop higher oil prices, or they cannot stop China from getting stronger and all this. So now today, the average person is competing for a job with somebody in India or the Philippines or Ireland. So it is a different world today, although it is easier to get rich. But if you have a complacent attitude, I think it's a tough world right now.
I probably disagree with Robert on one thing. I think the government can do a lot about oil prices. I think they could really drive the prices down a lot. And I think the oil-producing states are getting away with murder, and I think oil companies are getting away with murder. And lots of people having to do with energy are getting away with murder. So I really feel our government could be much more proactive in that. But there are many things that the government cannot do well.
Well, Donald and I were very blessed that we both had rich dads. My best friend's father was my rich dad. And financial education is more important than ever before. So I thank you for viewing this, and I wish you all the best of luck.